Welcome back, everybody, to the Teen Titans retrospective, going through every episode of the original series. This week, Slade is back. Oh no, I thought he was dead. This is Season 3, Episode 5, Haunted, written by Adam Beechin and directed by Ben Jones. Let's jump right into things. First off, we get a little cameo from Silky, and that comes into play a few episodes from now. He has a few cameos throughout this season before he makes his official debut in the episode Can I Keep Him? Moving on. So Robin is going through his stuff, and he has like an old Slade mask that he kept, and he's kind of still haunted, metaphorically, by Slade. Slade was such an impactful villain for Robin that he still can't really get the thought of him out of his head. Robin is still kind of obsessing over the thought that Slade could theoretically still be out there and still come back sometime. I think Robin even says, like, they never found his body, and then Cyborg's like, yeah, because he fucking melted in lava. Dude's gone. But there's just something about Slade that really gets under Robin's skin. And even though we know he's dead, Robin is still a little bit obsessed with figuring out Slade's whole deal. A little bit of smoke seems to come out of the Slade mask, but moving on, we gotta do a fight with Cinderblock. We haven't seen him in a few episodes, so that's kind of fun. Robin briefly gets separated from the group during this fight and then sees what appears to be Slade.
But he's dead.
Yes.
You said he was dead.
Ooh, spooky. Robin is seeing Slade, he fights him, but then when the other Titans come to interact, they quickly realize that Robin is the only one that seems to be able to see Slade. And eventually we realize that Slade is not really there. Is he a ghost? Is what's going on? Turns out that Slade had put some type of hallucinogen in his mask that Robin took, and it happened to trigger, causing Robin to inhale some kind of drug that caused him to see visions of Slade. Because he ends up like getting into a fight with Slade, but there's no one actually there. It's the sort of Tyler Durden situation where he believes that he's getting beat up, and so like he starts to physically be harmed, and it's a lot of like him thinking he gets pushed and then like falls down a flight of stairs, that kind of thing. So he is like getting physically hurt, but it's more because like he thinks he's getting knocked over and then like falls over, that kind of thing. But he does get like pretty fucked up during this imaginary fight. That's the thing that's happening in this episode. So, like, throughout the episode, Robin gets, like, more and more obsessed with trying to defeat Slade. He freaks out at his team because he seems to be the only one that can see Slade. And then, like, his mind keeps, like, rationalizing it. It's like, oh, well, Slade must be using some type of cloaking device. But he's not thinking, like, well, then how come no one else can see him? Eventually, the rest of the Titans figure out that, like, okay, something is wrong with Robin. Robin goes to Slade's old gear.
Metal Gear.
Layer at one point, and it's, like, more decrepit, and everything's like kind of destroyed and stuff. But anyways, I think this episode didn't quite do a whole lot for me on this rewatch because I already know the twist of this episode, which is that Robin is just hallucinating Slade. He's not really back. There's a lot more tension on like a first watch because you, along with Robin and the other Titans, are trying to figure out what is going on. Like in terms of plot, there really isn't much more to this one once you already know what is going on, because Slade's not actually there, so there is no like grand conspiracy. Slade doesn't have like a big overarching plan. He just has this like one specific trap triggered very Jigsaw like long after his demise to fuck with Robin just a little bit more. And obviously we also play on some of Robin's biggest fears of like, what if this guy came back? What if I can't defeat him? Robin kind of falling back on becoming a little more Batman-like, being like, oh, I don't need other people in my life, forgetting that his friends, his family are the ones that help him out and the reason that he was able to defeat Slade in the first place. There's a cool moment where Raven is trying to figure out, well, the rest of the Titans are trying to figure out what's wrong with Robin, and Raven psychically like enters his mind and sees what he's seeing. While she's looking through his like mind and his memories and stuff, we see a really brief flash of the Flying Graysons. In Robin's comic book origin, he used to be an acrobat with his family, known as the Flying Graysons. Then, depending on the version, some villain, sometimes it's Two-Face, sometimes it's a completely other guy, ends up killing his parents, Robin is left orphaned to then be raised by Batman. We get a little brief flash of that here, which is really interesting because there are so few references to Batman and that side of Robin's character. So like every time we do get a little hint of that, it's like, oh, right, he's from Batman.
We also briefly see what looks like the Batcave, which is super interesting. It's really brief, but we see what looks like the silhouette of Robin being like almost sworn in, like he has to say some type of pledge. Interesting. And I'm guessing that's Bruce there, but the silhouette is like a little vague. Like to me, it kind of looks like it could be Alfred. I don't know, but it's interesting. Again, super cool that we see any of Gotham at all. Very curious.
But it's significant here as well thematically because we're dealing with Robin's like greatest fears about himself, about like not being good enough, about not being able to stop certain villains, about not being able to save his friends or his family. So Slade picks on those same like insecurities. And so we get Robin remembering his past trauma as well. Eventually, the other Titans are able to convince Robin, and he partially also figures it out, that there is no Slade. He's dead. He burned to death in lava. And that's mostly the episode. I do think this is still a very good episode, and we get, of course, more of Slade, which means more Ron Perlman, which is always great. Slade is a really excellent villain, and in this episode specifically, because it's Robin's own mind like creating this version of Slade, he like specifically targets all of Robin's fears and insecurities. And we also see that Slade does still seem to have a bit of a hold on Robin, even though he's not really there. Robin is still haunted by even just the thought of Slade, of what he did to the Titans in the past, and like the possibility that he could be out there somewhere. When Robin's talking about like, Slade's back, I don't know how, but he is. somehow Slade returned. The other Titans do question it. They're like, I thought he fucking melted in lava. I'm pretty sure he's dead.
The dude fell into a pit of lava. Who lives through something like that?
But at the same time, they're like, well, maybe he is back. Magic exists in this universe, so they've encountered some pretty strange stuff over the years, so it's not entirely outside of the realm of possibility. And so there is like a little seed of doubt like kind of planted in there. On rewatch, I think the episode is still good, but it doesn't like stick with me as much knowing the twist ahead of time. It kind of makes this episode feel like not as much of a big deal, even though it's like sort of the return of Slade. Still a good episode. We get a little glimpse into like the inner mind of Robin and his character, and like his fears and insecurities, some of his past trauma. All of that I think is solid. But it's also kind of stuff that we've dabbled in before. I do want to give a little bit of credit to some of the character dynamics this episode. Like when Robin starts going a little bit crazy, Cyborg is kind of the one who ends up like taking control and stepping into more of a leadership role, which does tie into Cyborg's arc throughout the season, becoming a little bit more self-actualized and stepping into a larger leadership role. That'll become more of a thing later on in the season, but it's nice to see that it is kind of set up in other episodes as well. At the very end of the episode, Cyborg discovers that this like booby trap from Slade was triggered from someone from the outside, which seems to imply that like Slade or maybe someone working for him remotely triggered this chemical that made Robin hallucinate. So that never gets followed up on. So I don't know what it like was supposed to be setting up. Slade technically does have another appearance later on, but it is a completely different, unrelated thing to this. So I guess they were just kind of like laying the seeds of like, we might bring Slade back at one point if we want to, or if we have a cool idea for it, but it ends up being a completely unrelated thing. So I don't know, but that's about it for this episode. Good one. Isn't quite as good on rewatch after already knowing the twist, but we still get to see Ron Perlman again, and that's always fun. So pretty good one.
Hi. So, well, editing this, I feel like I'm a little bit misrepresenting some of the strengths of this episode. And also, while I'm thinking about the episode more and more, I keep thinking of new things that I really like about this one. For some reason on my rewatch, I got stuck on thinking about how I know what the plot is already, even though this episode is like not really about the plot at all. It's a character study of Robin and like his fears and insecurities, diving into his mental state a little bit. There's a lot to love about it. Like, I want to mention the atmosphere of this episode is really, really cool. Lots of great spooky lighting throughout this whole episode. There's like cool fights in the rain and stuff. We also get this cool motif of light and dark, and the light like revealing the truth of the whole situation. They telegraph Slade not being real in this fight with the lightning. Slade will disappear briefly when the lightning flashes. In this fight later on at the end of the episode, the like lights will flicker and we'll see that Slade is not really there. And then this moment in the gear layer, Starfire illuminates the whole building in green, which contrasts the red lighting that we've seen earlier in this sequence, and she like shows the truth that there's not really a Slade. So I really like that motif. I think that's super cool. I also really love how each of the Titans is important in using their specific abilities and their strengths of character to help Robin come to this realization and to help him relearn the lesson that many of the Titans have to relearn this season, as we'll see going forward, that they're not alone, that they have friends and family with the Titans who will be there for them and will sympathize with them and will help them deal with whatever it is they're dealing with. Cyborg, like I said, steps into kind of more of a leadership role, but he also uses his specific technology to help figure out what is wrong with Robin. He's able to determine that there is no Slade. He would show up on his various sensors, and he's able to like monitor Robin's heart rate and all these other vitals that like indicate, okay, something's off with him, but there's definitely not a real person that they're fighting. Starfire's like pure optimism and faith in her friends is instrumental in like them not giving up on Robin. She's like, no, we need to help him. We need to figure out what it is that is wrong with him. And she fully believes that like he can be helped. Because there's a point where they're like, what do we do? Like, he's fucking crazy. At the same time, Starfire is willing to step in and do what's necessary when Robin maybe has gone too far. And again, she kind of like symbolizes this like hopeful light in finding the truth. I love a lot of the themes and stuff going on here. Raven also gets to connect with Robin using her magic psychic powers to see what he's seeing and feel what he's feeling. She is like, no, for Robin, this is real right now. What's going on in his mind, this is real. So this is like a real danger to him. So we need to like treat this seriously, because if you die in the dream, you die for real. It's not that exactly, but it's that type of thing of like, no, he's so deep into this like illusion that he's in physical danger. Beast Boy is also in this episode. He doesn't have a lot to do, so I don't love that, but whatever. The other Titans all get to be cool and help Robin in their unique, specific ways that utilize both their powers and abilities and their like emotional strengths. It's really well done. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is that like while on rewatch it is like fairly obvious what is really happening, on the first time viewing there's enough doubt that you're willing to question what is real. Slade as a character is shrouded in so much mystery throughout the series that, again, it doesn't feel outside the realm of possibility for him to return in some way. He has this fight with Robin in the rain in the woods, and it's actually very reminiscent to Slade and Robin's very first fight together when he's disguised as this weird old man. In that first fight, Slade is like at least aware of magic and maybe even able to do some magic himself. It's not entirely clear. At the very least, he's a master of illusion and deception and is able to like disappear seemingly out of nowhere, which is what happens in this fight when Robin's facing him as well. He'll like throw a projectile at Slade and Slade will somehow not get hit by it. We know this is because Slade is not really there, but at the same time, like, Slade's done this type of move before, so maybe he is there. The other thing we know about Slade is that he's got contingencies upon contingencies. He always seems to be 2 steps ahead and have like 6 other evil plans in case the first one goes wrong. Half the time when they fight Slade, he's not even there. He turns out to be some kind of robot. So there is like the potential that when we saw Slade melt in lava, maybe that wasn't him. Maybe it was another robot. It turns out to be that it is him for sure. We'll get to that later. But at this point in the show, we don't know for sure that Slade's really gone. So even though on rewatch, it's pretty clear what's going on the first time viewing, there's enough doubt and enough mystery that it keeps you engaged. Plus, like, Slade is a really fun villain, so part of you kind of wants him to be back. And let's go even further. Let's really overanalyze this shit. So we have, like, the darkness and the light motif. Robin keeps moving further into darkness throughout this episode, and his friends are trying to, like, pull him back towards the light, towards the truth. But Robin is very familiar with darkness as being trained by Batman. That's like his whole deal. This episode even opens with Robin descending into the basement downstairs into the dark. And then later on in the episode, we see a flashback to the Batcave. And we specifically focus on the stairs leading into the Batcave from the mansion. The stairs that go down into the basement, into the dark, into deception. And we're paralleling that with Robin descending into the darkness, going into the basement, into the dark, down the stairs, towards this like memory box of Slade, towards this symbol of his past. And I think like if we really overanalyze what does it mean for Robin to be haunted, he's haunted by his past. What does that mean? One, he's haunted, metaphorically by Slade, but Slade also represents something really interesting for Robin. Slade kind of represents the like trauma with whatever went wrong with him and Batman. They don't seem to be talking currently. Slade tries to recruit Robin as an apprentice. Robin already had some kind of relationship with Batman, which I don't think you could call super healthy. So Slade sort of represents like Robin's trauma, both with whatever was up with him and Batman, but also the trauma that he first faced with the death of his true parents, which led directly to him being involved with Batman and becoming Robin. I think there's also something interesting going on with the fact that Robin seems to have a tough time letting go of Slade. Slade died in the previous season, but he died under these big dramatic circumstances with this fight with Tara, where she blows up this whole underground base, burying herself, melting Slade in lava, and Robin is like barely involved. Like the Titans are there, and Beast Boy does a lot to help bring Tara back to the good side more or less, or at least help her to break free of Slade's control. And the other Titans are like involved in that, but Robin does very little in the big defeat and death of Slade. And Slade was like Robin's villain for all of season 1. He has like a big personal connection with Slade. And I think he might have not necessarily resented Tara, but like had trouble accepting the way that all of that went down. And also, I think it's tough for him to let go of Slade because Slade represents all of his like past trauma. We're drawing parallels to Slade and Robin's personal trauma, and Robin's always quick to blame Slade whenever like something goes wrong. It's similar to a Batman and Joker type thing where they like almost complete each other in a weird way. Robin is able to kind of like blame Slade for all of his problems, all of the Titans like failures, all of his personal failures. Slade gives Robin someone to root against, someone to like point at, something to be like, you're the reason that things are bad. And if Slade is gone and Robin still has his trauma, then it's like harder to point at something specific. So Slade being back in Robin's mind is almost some type of relief. Like it's like, okay, now I know what to do. Now I know who to stop. Now I know what to fight and what to punch. So I think there's a lot of really, really interesting thematic stuff going on in this episode if you like overanalyze it too much. But that's sort of like what I love about this show is there's so much stuff in the like subtext that's never really explicitly talked about, but there's a lot of stuff going on there. This episode, the more I think about it, is not only a great episode, but possibly one of the best in the whole show. Definitely a high recommend for me.
Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you like this, make sure you subscribe, because we're going through every single episode of the original Teen Titans, week by week, episode by episode. We'll be back next week with another episode, so stay tuned. We'll see you then.